I died clutching the air where my baby should have been. They told me she was stillborn. No body, no goodbye, just a hollow echo of cries I never heard. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I woke up gasping in a hospital bed, the sterile smell flooding my senses. The walls were familiar, too familiar. My hand flew to my belly, still round, still full of life. The calendar confirmed it. I was back before they took her. The door creaked open. Bradley stepped in with that smug, insincere smile I used to believe meant love. I almost laughed. He had no idea I remembered everything. No idea I knew what he and his barren mistress planned. This time, I wouldn't play the fool. I would play the game. And when the time came, I would take more than just revenge. I would take everything. He always said I was lucky to marry him. A nobody girl from a small town? What did I know about wealth, power, or secrets? Bradley wore kindness like a costume. When I married him, I thought I found security. In truth, I handed my life to a man who only loved himself. His mother constantly reminded me that my background wasn't good enough for their family. But I was young and pregnant, and hope clung to my bones like perfume. I believed I could prove my worth. When I told Bradley I was pregnant, he didn't celebrate. He calculated. His distant gaze should have warned me. Instead, I thought he was stressed about fatherhood. I didn't know he was already planning to take the baby from me and hand her to the woman he truly loved, the same woman who once said, "I'd do anything to be a mother." Anything. I had no idea that included stealing mine. When I reached the final month of pregnancy, Bradley insisted we go to a private hospital his family trusted. "It's safer," he told me, placing a cold hand on my shoulder. "More discreet." I nodded like an obedient wife, not knowing I was being walked into a trap. His mother came to visit with a brand new suitcase for the baby, pink blankets embroidered with initials I didn't recognize. When I asked, she said, "Just something traditional from my side." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. But I was naive. I chalked it up to nerves. I didn't know they'd arranged for my labor to be induced early, that they'd signed forms in my name, that my baby would be whisked away the moment she was born. I didn't know that woman. Lisa was already in a recovery room, ready to pose as the mother of my child. I didn't know until it was too late. The day I gave birth was the day my world stopped. I remembered the searing pain, the sterile lights, the nurses whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. I screamed, begged to see my baby, but no one met my eyes. Then Bradley came in, stone-faced, and said, "She didn't make it." He handed me a form to sign, something about release of remains. But I never saw a body. No tiny hand to hold. No chance to say goodbye. Just silence. Cold, unrelenting silence. The days after blurred into a fog of grief. Bradley never held me. He didn't grieve. Instead, he disappeared for hours, days. I thought he was coping in his own way. I didn't know he was celebrating with Lisa, who was holding my daughter in her arms like she was hers. They cremated an empty box while my baby slept in someone else's nursery, and I was dying slowly day by day. I began unraveling. I stopped eating. I stopped speaking. I stared out the window for hours, waiting for a cry that never came. Bradley mocked my silence. "You're not the first woman to lose a child," he said once, tossing a wine glass in the sink. But even grief couldn't dull the growing sense that something was deeply wrong. One night, I found insurance paperwork under the bed. Massive policies taken out in my name, signed with a signature that wasn't mine. There were records of funds transferred from my trust, money my late grandmother left me, to an account I'd never seen. I began asking questions. Quietly, carefully. That's when Bradley changed. The mask slipped. He slapped me during dinner, told me I was ungrateful. You were just a means to an end, he snarled. A womb. That's all. My heart cracked in places I didn't know existed. I had nothing left. Or so I thought. The night it happened, it was raining. I walked out barefoot, still wearing the house robe stained with tears and silence. I didn't care. I didn't care where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. My feet bled on the pavement, my skin numb to the cold. I wandered the city in a daze, clutching a photo of an ultrasound like it could bring her back. Then, in a cruel twist, I saw them, Lisa and Bradley, in a warm cafe, laughing over a baby in a pink bonnet. My baby. I froze, paralyzed with disbelief. The world spun. That was the last thing I saw before collapsing in the street. They said it was a heart attack, brought on by stress, starvation, despair. Whatever it was, it ended me. And yet it didn't, because now I was here again. Alive. Pregnant. A second chance clenched between my trembling fists. And this time, I wouldn't waste it. When I first woke up, I thought I was hallucinating. But then I saw the date on the wall calendar. My fingers counted back the weeks, the moments. It was real. I had been sent back, reborn, not into a new body, but into the same broken life with one final chance to set it right. I touched my swollen belly, whispered to the child inside, "This time, baby, I'm ready." I had knowledge I shouldn't have. I remembered every betrayal, every cruel plan. I knew Lisa's name, knew the hospital's staff schedules, knew Bradley's passwords, his lies. But I played dumb. When he brought me juice that morning, I smiled. When he kissed my forehead, I didn't flinch. He thought I was still blind, still soft, but underneath my skin, something had sharpened. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't run. I would dismantle them. Quietly, thoughtfully, with a mother's vengeance, slow and complete. I started keeping a journal, pretending it was for the baby. In truth, it was my war log. I documented everything. Bradley's calls, Lisa's schedule, the names of hospital staff who'd assisted during the last birth. I created secret email accounts, used burner phones I hid in tampon boxes. While Bradley kissed me goodbye each morning, I gathered evidence. Every time he whispered sweet nothings, I imagined slamming those lies back down his throat. But I waited. The first thing I did was visit another hospital under a fake name. There, I booked a consultation and had a confidential paternity and maternity rights session. I learned things, legal loopholes, witness protections, custody leverage. The lawyer handed me a card and said, "Call me the minute things feel off." I nodded. Things already were. Back at home, Bradley sat on the couch, texting. I saw the name, Lisa. I smiled. Let them think I was still the same fool. They had forged everything before, from hospital forms to trust fund access. This time, I got ahead of them. I registered the baby's future name under my maiden name, set up two-factor verification on all my accounts, changed my emergency contacts. The pieces began falling into place. Then I did something bold. I messaged Lisa, anonymously, posing as a hopeful mother seeking adoption advice. I told her I was willing to give up my baby to a family who deserved her. Lisa replied in minutes, "I know how hard it is to let go. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers." Her words twisted something in my chest, but I played along. I kept feeding her the fantasy of a desperate woman. At the same time, I hired a private investigator. I wanted hard proof. I wanted names, faces, bank transfers. What they'd taken from me, I would now take from them, one by one. They underestimated me. Once. That would be their last mistake. I dropped subtle hints to Bradley that I was considering a home birth. His reaction was immediate, too immediate. He panicked. "It's not safe," he said, voice cracking. "What if something goes wrong?" He offered to set up a tour of the private hospital again. I smiled and agreed. At the hospital, I met the same nurse who'd once told me my baby was gone. I stared into her eyes until she looked away. Later, I waited until her shift ended and followed her to her car. Calmly, I asked her if she remembered me. She did. I watched her face go pale as I listed every detail from my lost birth down to the timestamp on the falsified records. "You can either help me now," I said, "or fall with them later." She nodded, trembling. And just like that, I had my first ally. The nurse's name was Elena, and guilt poured out of her the moment we sat down in a quiet cafe away from hospital eyes. She hadn't known everything, just enough to feel sick when she learned the truth. She told me that Bradley's mother arranged generous donations to ensure privacy and discretion. Lisa had posed as my cousin during delivery, claiming I was mentally unfit to raise a child. "You looked so drugged," Elena whispered, her eyes glassy. I wanted to say something, but "Your husband, he said you'd agreed to it all." My fingers clenched around the mug. "Will you testify?" I asked. She hesitated but nodded. "If you can protect me." I promised I would. Later that night, I stared at Bradley across the dinner table as he scrolled through his phone. I smiled sweetly. "I think I want to do a baby shower," I said. He blinked. "Why now?" "Because I'm preparing your end." The guest list was carefully curated. People who mattered, people whose reputations would burn if tied to a scandal. I made sure Lisa received an anonymous invite, and I knew her pride wouldn't let her skip. Meanwhile, the private investigator delivered results faster than I dreamed. Financial documents showed large transfers from my trust fund into offshore accounts. Surveillance photos confirmed Lisa with our daughter, on multiple occasions, usually just after Bradley made mysterious trips. There were even records of a pediatrician visit under Lisa's name, where the child's date of birth matched mine. My lawyer helped me draft an airtight plan. I wasn't just going to take them down. I was going to expose them publicly, let them drown in the disgrace they inflicted on me. At the baby shower, I wore a deep crimson dress, hugging my belly like a warning. "You look radiant," Bradley said. I smiled, knowing it'd be his last compliment. Lisa arrived half an hour late, acting surprised to see me so glowing. "Oh, you're still pregnant," she said, eyes scanning my bump like it offended her. I welcomed her with a warm hug and whispered in her ear, "Hope the baby's doing well." She stiffened. Her eyes flicked to Bradley, who stood frozen across the room. I watched them from a distance, how they whispered near the champagne tray, Lisa's face turning red. My friend, who I'd secretly looped into my plan, took photos of their hushed conversation. "Are you sure she doesn't know?" Lisa asked, her voice barely audible. On our hidden mic, "Of course not," Bradley replied. "She's an idiot. Always has been." I kept my smile steady as I cut into the baby shower cake. Inside, I was volcanic. The betrayal, the lies, the cruelty. It all fed the fire that would reduce their lives to ash. They just didn't know it yet. That evening, after the guests left and Bradley retreated to his office, I opened a hidden panel behind our bedroom mirror and pulled out the flash drive. It contained every piece of evidence: the voice recording from the shower, bank statements, even a snippet of a phone call between Lisa and her best friend, where she said, "It's hilarious how easily we fooled her. The poor thing still thinks the baby died." I copied everything onto 3 separate drives and hid them in different locations, one in a bank deposit box, another with my lawyer, and the last with Elena. Then I drafted an anonymous email to a popular local journalist. The truth behind a wealthy couple's stolen child. Are you interested in a career-defining expose? I attached a teaser photo of Lisa and my daughter outside a pediatrician's office. I knew she'd bite, and when she did, the world would finally see what I had endured and how I would rise. The next morning, Bradley noticed I'd been humming as I made breakfast. "You seem happy," he said. "Suspicious. What's going on?" I handed him a plate with eggs, toast, and an extra side of fake affection. "Just excited to meet our baby," I said sweetly. Inside, I was counting down hours. At 2 p.m., the journalist replied, "This story is explosive. Let's meet." We arranged a time. Meanwhile, I told Elena to go on medical leave. "Immediately, they'll come for you when they realize what I've done," I warned. She packed and left town that afternoon. I transferred a lump sum into her account for protection. The walls around Bradley's empire were already crumbling. That night, he came to bed and tried to pull me close. I pulled away. "You smell like Lisa's perfume," I whispered. His hand froze. I met his eyes. "Did you think I'd never find out?" He said nothing. His silence was confession enough. I didn't need him to confess. I already had everything. The next day, I met the journalist, a woman named Naomi, at a quiet bookstore cafe. She listened as I laid out the story, piece by piece, her eyes growing wider with each proof. "Do you realize what this will do?" she asked, stunned. "Your husband, his family, they'll be ruined." I nodded. "They took my child, my life. It's time I took something back." Naomi promised the story would run by Monday. That gave me 72 hours to prepare for the explosion. I went home and began packing quietly, not fleeing, just safeguarding. I removed personal items, backups, heirlooms. Then I made a copy of the story link and scheduled it to send to every guest at the baby shower the moment it went live. Sunday night, I sat on the balcony, breathing the quiet air. It was the calm before a reckoning they could never escape. Monday morning arrived like thunder. The article's headline screamed across social media: "Socialite couple accused of stealing infant from grieving mother." Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages. Friends, acquaintances, reporters. Bradley stormed into the kitchen, holding his phone like it was a weapon. "What the hell did you do?" he yelled. I stood calmly, stirring tea. I told the truth. He lunged at me, but I stepped back. "Try it." I dared. "I have a restraining order drafted and ready." He paused. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. "This is slander," he hissed. "I'll sue you for everything." I laughed. "You already stole everything. Now it's my turn." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Police, a detective, and a social worker. I handed them the flash drive, turned to Bradley, and said, "They're here for the baby." He paled. He finally understood. I hadn't come to fight. I'd come to win. Lisa was arrested first. Naomi's article had gone viral, and online sleuths dug deeper, uncovering fake adoption claims, fraud, and stolen medical records. Lisa's desperate sobs echoed from the back of the squad car. "You said she wouldn't fight," she screamed at Bradley. "You said she was broken." Bradley stood frozen in the driveway, all color drained from his face. The officers moved in next, cuffing him as neighbors watched. I stepped outside, cradling my belly, the wind warm against my skin. "Smile for the cameras," I said. He turned to me, lips trembling. "Why?" he whispered. "Because you taught me how?" I replied. "You wanted a mother for your mistress's dream. I became a storm instead." As they dragged him away, I stood tall, the press capturing every second. I didn't hide. I didn't tremble. I let them see me. Let them see the woman they thought they destroyed, reborn, radiant, and ruthlessly alive. I testified with unwavering calm. Elena backed me with hospital records and first-hand accounts. Even Lisa's best friend came forward once she realized she might be implicated. Piece by piece, the truth formed an undeniable picture. Bradley had manipulated doctors, forged documents, and used his family's wealth to orchestrate the theft of my child. The jury took one look at the evidence and didn't need convincing. Lisa was sentenced first for fraud, child abduction, and conspiracy. Bradley followed for abuse, financial manipulation, and criminal impersonation. The court granted me full custody of my daughter, who had been placed under temporary care while the investigation unfolded. I met her again in a soft-lit room, her small hand grasping mine. She didn't recognize me, not yet, but her fingers curled around mine like fate itself. "Hi, baby," I whispered, eyes flooding. "Mama's here." This time, I wouldn't let go. This time, they could watch me take everything back. The first night with her was quiet, uncertain. She clung to a soft rabbit plush, one I recognized from Lisa's old vacation photos. I didn't take it away. I just placed a new one beside it, one I had bought years ago, dreaming of the daughter I never held. She glanced at me, cautious but curious. I let her come to me in her own time. Days passed, and the walls she had built, walls no child should ever need, began to crack. She laughed once, high and shy, when I made a pancake look like a bear. She started calling me Mama after a nightmare, her small voice trembling in the dark. I held her close, promising again and again, "No one will take you from me again." And I meant it. They had stolen years from us. But from this day forward, I would give her a life so bright it burned their memory away. The world didn't stop just because I had justice. There were legal appeals, media vultures, and whispers at the grocery store. But I didn't hide. I faced every question, every glance, with the grace of a woman who had survived hell and refused to shrink. I began volunteering at a support center for women who had lost children, some through systems, others through lies. My story gave them hope, but I didn't share it for fame. I shared it so no one else would feel as alone as I once did. Meanwhile, my daughter, now legally and publicly mine, began to smile more. She painted messy rainbows and asked if we could get a dog. I said yes, not because I needed to prove anything, but because every yes to her was a no to the life they'd forced on us. Every giggle, every muddy footprint was a reminder that I'd not just survived, I'd started again. Bradley tried writing to us from prison. The first letter was full of excuses. I was manipulated. He said, "Lisa pressured me. I didn't know what else to do." I tore it up without reading past the first line. The second letter came weeks later, this one begging, "I miss you. I miss our daughter. Please let me explain. Please let her know I love her. I didn't tear that one. I kept it in a box labeled Examples of Cowardice. When my daughter asked about her father years later, I'd show her what love doesn't look like. Lisa tried too. Her lawyer sent a plea for leniency in sentencing. She claimed mental illness, grief, hormonal confusion. I sent back a single document, the pediatric record, where she listed herself as mother. No words, just proof. The system that once silenced me now spoke for me. And every day I watched my daughter grow. That silence felt like peace. On our first real vacation together, just the two of us, we went to a quiet seaside town where no one knew our story. She collected shells like treasure, told every dog we passed, I have a mama now. I'd cry behind sunglasses, overwhelmed not by pain, but by joy I never thought I'd get to feel. One night, we sat by a bonfire, roasting marshmallows, and she asked, "Why didn't you come get me sooner?" My heart clenched. I told her gently, "Because they told me you were gone. But I never stopped dreaming of you. I never stopped loving you." She nestled into my side, sticky fingers and all, and whispered, "I dreamed of you too." It wasn't just healing, it was sacred. They took my baby for their greed, their convenience, but I had reclaimed her, and now I was building a life so rich even grief had no place left to grow. Years passed, the headlines faded, new scandals replaced old ones, and Bradley and Lisa's names became trivia in cautionary news segments. But I never forgot, nor did I forgive. I used the compensation money from the civil case to start a foundation in my daughter's name, one that protected vulnerable mothers, exposed fraudulent adoptions, and trained whistleblowers in medical spaces. Elena joined the board. Naomi published a book. And me? I returned to school, earned my degree in child advocacy, and began working within the very system that had once failed me. I wanted to become the sword I never had. My daughter, now vibrant, mischievous, and deeply loved, often sat in the front row when I gave talks. She clapped loudest, and whenever people asked what gave me the strength to rebuild after losing everything, I said simply, she did, because they didn't just steal my child. They awakened the part of me that never breaks. One spring afternoon, I found an old photo album hidden beneath boxes in storage. It had pictures from our wedding. Me, too thin, smiling too hard. Bradley, smug. Lisa, always nearby, always watching. I almost burned it, but then I paused. My daughter walked in. Curious. "Who's that?" she asked, pointing at a younger me. I smiled. That was me before I knew how strong I could be. She studied the photo and nodded. "You look kind of sad." I nodded too. I didn't tell her about the betrayal, the blood, the hospital bed. I told her what she needed to know. That kindness without boundaries isn't noble, it's dangerous. That some people don't love, they possess. And that when you find your voice again, after it's been stolen, you must use it to lift others. She looked at me, solemn, then hugged me tight. "I like you better now." I smiled. "So, do I?" Even now, I sometimes wake at 2 a.m., heart racing, convinced I'm still in that hospital bed, drugged and grieving, but then I hear her soft snore down the hall or see her light flick on as she sneaks a book under the covers, and I remember, it's over. The past can haunt, yes, but it cannot touch what I've reclaimed. I no longer walk like someone who's afraid to be seen. I walk like a mother who was reborn through fire. I walk like someone who took back what was stolen. And more, they thought they could end me. They thought a baby could be replaced, that a lie could be lived forever. But I showed them that even the quietest woman can become thunder. Even the most broken can build a fortress. And now, when people ask me who I am, I say this: I am her mother, and I am the storm they never saw coming. I never planned revenge, not the kind you see in movies, all fire and spectacle. My vengeance was slower, colder. It was letting them rot in irrelevance while I flourished. It was making sure the lawyers who once turned me away now sought my expertise. It was watching Lisa's medical license be permanently revoked while mine, in advocacy, earned awards. And Bradley? He lost appeal after appeal. His once loyal business partners severed ties, embarrassed to have ever known him. When he was finally released, years later, no one waited outside the gate. He emerged a ghost into a world that had long moved on. But me? I walked across graduation stages with my daughter cheering loudest. I opened shelters. I gave talks on justice. I never raised my voice in vengeance, because my life now was the loudest retribution of all. And still, I tucked her in every night with the same promise: no one will hurt you again. There were moments I doubted myself, not about the battle. I'd fought that with every breath, but about whether I was enough for her. Could I undo the damage? Could love alone fill the hollowed-out places left by betrayal? One night, after she had a nightmare, and I held her until she fell asleep, she whispered in her sleep, "Mama won't leave me." And something in me broke and healed all at once. That's when I realized I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to be real, present, and unshakably hers. The world had tried to rip us apart, but we had built something stronger than blood: trust. Her tiny hand in mine was more than redemption. It was resurrection. In every moment I chose to stay, to listen, to protect, I reclaimed her. And in every moment she leaned into me, I knew we weren't just surviving. We were thriving in defiance of everything they tried to destroy. When the news broke that Lisa had attempted to start a family again, this time through overseas surrogacy, I didn't flinch. People sent me the article, some expecting outrage. But I felt nothing. She could buy all the babies in the world, but she would never know what it meant to have one who chose to love you. That's what my daughter gave me: choice. Every time she reached for my hand, laughed at my jokes, or came running into my arms, it wasn't because she was told to. It was because she knew I'd never let go. Lisa could pretend, stage photo shoots, post curated happiness online, but I had something she could never fake: a daughter who looked at me like I was her whole world. And maybe that's what truly broke Lisa in the end. Not the sentence, not the public shame, but knowing that in the end, the child she stole had always belonged to me. We moved once to a home with a garden and wide windows, the kind of place I used to dream about during my darkest nights. I painted her room in soft yellows and let her choose the curtains. We planted a tree together in the backyard, just the two of us. She said it was our forever tree, and every year on the date we reunited, we'd tie a ribbon around its trunk. The first year, she chose pink. The second, blue. By the third year, there were so many ribbons it looked like a celebration. And it was. Each one marked another year. They failed to break us. That tree grew taller every season, its roots steady, its branches bold. Just like her, just like me. We weren't the same people we'd once been: wounded, quiet, afraid. We had become something fierce, something whole, something that no one, not even the past could undo again. Eventually, she asked the question I knew would come. Why did they do it? We were folding laundry when she paused, holding one of her old shirts to her chest. Why would someone take a baby from their mom? I set the towel down, heart heavy, because some people think love is something you can steal. I said softly, but love doesn't work like that. It grows, and it chooses. She nodded slowly, her eyes older than they should have been. They didn't choose me, she whispered. I pulled her into my arms. No, they chose what they wanted to believe. But I chose you. Every day, even when I didn't know where you were, I was still choosing you. She didn't cry. She just held me tighter. And in that moment, I knew she understood. Not everything, but enough. Enough to start healing, not just from what they'd done, but from the idea that it was ever her fault. One day, my daughter brought home an art project from school. A family tree, scribbled and messy. But what struck me was how she'd labeled it. Next to her own name, she wrote, "Loved," and beneath mine, "Found me." I stared at it longer than I should have, the colors blurring. She watched me, worried. "Is it wrong?" she asked. "Should I have written Mom instead?" I shook my head, pulling her into my lap. "No," I whispered, voice thick. "It's perfect." Because that's what we were. We had found each other in the rubble, in the silence, in the spaces where love had been stolen and buried. We unearthed it. We made it new. Every step we took, every fight we won, every scar we turned into strength, it all led to this. A messy drawing taped to a refrigerator that told the world exactly who we were. Not broken, not lost, but found. There were nights when I'd stay up long after she'd gone to bed, just watching her breathe. It wasn't fear anymore. It was awe. Awe that after all we endured, she could still sleep so peacefully, that the world had failed her so badly. Yet somehow she hadn't hardened. She still laughed. She still cared. She still believed in magic. And I vowed, right there in those quiet hours, that I'd never let her carry the weight I had. I'd absorb it, burn it, rewrite it, because while they had stolen the beginning of our story, they would never touch the ending. That belonged to us. One that was not written in tears or blood, but in sunrises, inside jokes, sleepy hugs, and hand-picked flowers. The ending where I didn't just get my daughter back. I gave her a life that erased every shadow they ever cast. And in doing that, I became the woman they never expected me to be. Bradley's downfall wasn't loud. It was slow, public, humiliating. When he tried to restart his business under a new name, no one invested. People remembered. The internet remembered. His name was linked forever to greed and cruelty. I once read an article where a former colleague called him the man who lost everything for a lie. And that's what it was. A lie he and Lisa had convinced themselves was justified. They told themselves I was weak, unfit, easily erased. But the truth had teeth, and justice had a long memory. I never answered the calls he made from prison, never wrote back to the letters he sent, begging me to explain why I'd turned our daughter against him. I didn't need to explain. The truth stood tall in the life I built. His punishment wasn't just prison. It was watching me rise from the ashes he lit, without ever needing him again. Lisa's silence said more than her words ever had. After she was disbarred and publicly denounced, she disappeared into obscurity. A few journalists tried to reach her, offering to tell her side, but no one cared anymore. Her story was old, tired, unraveling with every fact revealed. One day, I received a small package with no return address. Inside was a photo A younger me, holding my newborn daughter in the hospital. On the back, in scrawled ink, I never deserved her. That was it. No signature. No apology. Just the weight of guilt captured in fading handwriting. I didn't show the photo to my daughter. Some ghosts deserve to stay buried. But I kept it, not out of sentiment, but as proof that even monsters can recognize the damage they've done. Lisa lost the child she tried to possess, and I, though scarred, regained the one they stole. In the end, the woman who tried to erase me vanished first. We celebrated each year on what we called our real birthday, the day we found our way back to each other. It wasn't marked with gifts, but with moments. Baking a new cake recipe, painting something wild, writing letters to our future selves. The last letter my daughter wrote said, "Dear future me, you are brave like Mom. You survived fire and grew flowers from it." I kept that note on my desk, beside the court decree that formally declared me her sole legal parent. Two symbols of the journey, one forged by law, the other by love. People often say healing isn't linear, and they're right. There were still nights she'd wake up crying, still questions that hurt to answer. But there was laughter too, so much laughter, and every smile, every giggle, every whispered, "I love you," was proof that we had chosen life over bitterness. We were the miracle they never planned for. A friend once asked me if I'd ever forgive them. The question sat between us like a stone. I thought about it often, not because I owed it to Bradley or Lisa, but because I owed it to myself. The truth is, forgiveness didn't look like what people expected. I didn't write letters. I didn't meet them in some dramatic confrontation. I simply stopped letting them live in my head. They didn't get to shape my future. That, to me, was forgiveness, cutting the final thread they had to me. I released them, not out of mercy, but out of power. My peace didn't need their apologies. It grew wild without permission. And in letting them go, I made more room for her, for bedtime stories, silly dances, and pancakes at midnight. That was the life I chose. A life where the past was just a shadow. And I finally stood in the light. Sometimes when we walk down the street, people stare. They see a woman with tired eyes and a girl with a bright laugh, and they wonder about our story. Some ask, most don't. But every so often, someone recognizes me. From the articles, from the trial, they'll whisper, "That's her." And I let them. I don't correct their stories anymore. Because the truth is, I'm not her anymore. Not just the woman who was betrayed or the mother who fought the system. I'm something else now. A survivor? Yes. A warrior? Sure. But more than anything, a home. For her, for me, for anyone who's ever been taken and told they were disposable. I am proof that you can be broken and still be beautiful, that you can be robbed and still rebuild. And as long as she reaches for my hand and calls me Mom, I will never need the world to understand anything else. The most profound moment came not in court, not in victory, but in the ordinary. We were at the grocery store. She picked out her favorite cereal and turned to ask, "Can we get two? One for us and one to donate." I nodded, speechless. It was small, but it wasn't. That kindness, that empathy, that was something born, not of blood, but of heart. They couldn't raise her that way, no matter how much they tried. They could feed her, clothe her, enroll her in expensive schools. But they couldn't give her what I had, the quiet certainty that she was seen, heard, and deeply loved. In that aisle, surrounded by strangers and fluorescent lights, I saw the full circle moment. She wasn't just mine again. She was becoming herself. good, kind, whole. And in that moment, I thanked every storm that tried to take us down, because without them, I might never have known her this way. There were still legal things to untangle, trusts, documents, reparations, but none of that held power over me anymore. I built my own wealth, not in dollars, but in stability. My daughter had her own savings account. We had our own insurance. Our names were ours alone. No one else's legacy attached. Sometimes I'd look at the file labeled "Case Closed" and feel nothing. It used to consume me. Now it was just paper. Proof that justice wasn't always fast or kind, but it could be final. I stopped attending therapy because I didn't need to process the pain anymore. I was busy living the joy. We traveled. We took up pottery. We even rescued a dog, who she named Justice. That was her idea. Every morning, he'd bark until we both got out of bed. And every morning, I'd smile, not because life was perfect, but because it was ours. And that finally was enough. Some days we talked about the past. Other days we didn't. Healing doesn't always look like sitting in silence with your trauma. It can also look like messy pancakes, mismatched socks, and dance parties in the kitchen. My daughter loved those moments the most. "This is what real life feels like," she once said, after we both collapsed on the floor laughing over spilled syrup. And she was right. This was real, not the polished, fabricated life they built around her with stolen love and lies. Not the cold house that looked perfect from the outside, but echoed with absence. This life, built with honesty and scars, had warmth in every corner. I was no longer the woman chasing justice. I was simply her mother, present, whole, unafraid. And for the first time, the past wasn't chasing me either. It was behind us, dimmed by a future so bright it made my eyes water. When fall came, we carved pumpkins together on our porch. She drew goofy faces, and I carved careful hearts. Neighbors walked by, waving. A few even stopped to chat. No one asked about headlines or court battles anymore. I wasn't that woman in their eyes. I was just me, the mom with great chili, and a kid who told stories that made everyone laugh. One neighbor said, "You two always seem so happy." I smiled and answered honestly, "We are." Not because we didn't carry history, but because we chose every day to live beyond it, to fill our home with so much love that even the old pain couldn't find space to settle. We planted tulips that year, her idea. They come back stronger every spring. She told me that's what we were now, perennials, not untouched by storms, but rooted deep enough to rise again, again, and again, always in bloom. Lisa sent one last letter before she vanished for good. I didn't open it, didn't need to. Some chapters don't need closure. They just need to end. I burned it without reading a word, watching the ashes float, like regrets released into the wind. Bradley, last I heard, was still serving time. I never taught my daughter to hate him. I just taught her to protect herself. And she did, with a grace that surprised even me. Some people break, so others can learn what not to become, she once told me. I didn't know where she heard it, but it stuck. She was right. Their cruelty had shaped her kindness. Their theft had deepened her empathy. And the family they tried to steal had only grown stronger in the fire, in trying to take everything from us. They gave us something they never meant to, clarity, and with it, an unshakable peace. One rainy day, I stood outside the courthouse where it all began. Not for a case, not for revenge, just because I happened to be nearby. I paused at the steps, remembering the first time I stood there, shaking, small, unheard. Now I stood steady. I whispered a thank you, not to the court, but to myself, for surviving, for never giving up, for choosing love over bitterness. The rain hit my skin like absolution. And in that moment, I felt no anger, no weight, just freedom. I turned away, knowing I'd never need to come back. That part of my life was closed. The rest was waiting, full of ordinary moments that meant everything. I walked home, where she was waiting with a new story to tell and a cup of tea already steeping. We didn't need to win the world's approval. We had already won something far greater. Our forever. She once asked what rebirth meant. I told her it's when you stop being who the world forced you to be and start becoming who you were always meant to be. So, we both got reborn? She asked. Together, I said, and that was the truth. I was reborn when I stopped chasing what they took and started embracing what they could never reach. My will, my love, my legacy. She was reborn when she realized she was never the possession of people who couldn't love her right. We didn't just survive their betrayal. We turned it into a beginning. Some might say they won for a while. But the story doesn't end in the stealing. It ends here in the reclaiming, in our laughter, in our peace, in the lives we built, not from ashes, but from fire. If you're listening and you've been stolen from, don't just wait to heal. Rise. Take it all back. And more. They took everything from me, but I was reborn. And in the end, I didn't just get my daughter back. I got my power back. So if they stole your light, take it as a sign. It's your turn to rise.